Everyone, good afternoon, evening. I'd like to call this meeting of BPAC to order. Ms. Barber, if you can please lead us in the roll call.
Certainly. Brian Goose, Chair.
Here.
Adam Lynch, Vice Chair. Chris Clark. Jamie Jackson. Wick. Stephen Littlewood. Here. Yamina Jordan. Aaron Frank. Kevin Brown. Here. Brenda Lippett. Here. Joy Himes. Ben Matters. Chris Collins. Oh, by the way, that's the new National Park Service Acting Superintendent.
Okay.
Lee Anderson. Here. Adam Lynch.
Here. Still here.
Oh, sorry.
You're very important. You're twice.
You're that. Deborah Fultz. Deborah Lately.
Deborah's on the phone.
Okay. They're very quiet. Rob Maple. Jim Lynch. He told me he wasn't going to be here. Joe Bond. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So can I get some more places to run?
So Craig. Craig. Yeah.
No,
I can go.
Yeah, apparently you can go. Why aren't you here? Okay, I got you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Definitely here.
Next time you'll be on there twice.
I think this is an old, I think this got printed, it was like a different version of the, I'm so sorry.
Oh, wow. They were on.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, there's a bunch of people.
You want to do that again?
I can catch them. Hello, everybody.
Welcome, everyone. All right, so we'll move on to agenda item number 3, which is approval of the meeting agenda. And I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda. Ms. Barber informed me that we should probably add an action item for this. And this would be, if you recall, at the last meeting, we had an action item about sending a request to the policy committee to have a BPAC representative. And turns out, in order to allow that, their bylaws will need to be amended. Did I get that right, Carrie? Okay. So what the discussion item is whether or not we want to select someone to fill that position or have a volunteer, or if it should default to the chairman of BPAC. So I'd like to make a motion to add that as agenda item 7D. Are there any other requests for changes to the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda with amendment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Next up is approval of the May 5th meeting minutes. And I did have just a couple minor comments on the minutes. Under committee members not present, Kirsten is listed twice.
Okay.
And I didn't see Stan.
Okay. I've removed Stan because he's missed so many meetings. He's no longer considered a member.
Gotcha. All right. And that was all I had. Did anyone have anything else on the minutes?
Move to approve with the amendments. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, FAMPO Administrator Report. See, Mr. Olis is stacked out. Should we?
Oh,
there we go.
You're up.
Yeah, you're up.
In the restroom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm told that if I sit there, the people on the online can't hear me. So I need to be just a little closer to the microphone. So, but I'll do it from here. So I'm just going to show you a little of what we did to policy committee recently. It's a similar presentation what is the future direction of FAMPO, policies and research that we look at, projects and delivery. Basically, I'm trying to answer the question on the next slide. Ian, what So what's the big picture look like? So, working on developing a vision for FAMPO, and you all remember the survey we sent out. We're working on answering that question, what is our vision? Then develop policy to implement that vision. Policy might be, we believe in doubling the number of bike paths in the region, for example. It would be a policy. So what are the policies that fit with that vision? Then we conduct studies and surveys to identify projects and design those projects so that we can implement the vision and the policies that parks departments, state and federal. Jamie is wearing two hats, I think. I don't know which one you're wearing tonight, but as the head of Fred Transit, but also as head of planning, transportation planning for the city. So Fred is another one of our partners. We have federal partners, etc. So cooperation among our stakeholders to implement that vision. If we don't cooperate, we've seen what that looks like. 2 years ago, we were in a place as FAMPO where it kind of hangs together. So even though we're going to get lost in the weeds on details, this is how I'm intending to develop what we do at FAMPO from a staff level. Next one. So the process underway with the vision, you've done the survey. Staff are going to use the survey and other research over about 3 months to synthesize the vision document, bring it to you as committees to talk about, edit, change, think about, and then match policies to that vision. Next slide. And Jamie could tell you about how we try to move people more efficiently with transit and other things, and encourage better choices and options for travel, right? That's a policy. Everyone driving alone in a car at the same time, every citizen that lives, and even non-citizens that live in our area, if they all drive alone in a car at the same time on the limited number of roads we have, together with all the freight traffic, it's a disaster. It's not a sustainable future. There's not enough road. The pipeline studies, where some people in the room were trying to argue that we need another traffic light on US 1. And Chris will tell you how I went to the meeting and argued the exact opposite, because I don't want any more traffic lights on the US 1. Why? Well, we want to move cars and buses and trucks faster on the US 1. The more traffic lights you put on it, what happens? Slows it down, right? There's good reasons to have traffic lights. I mean, you don't want with that, because it's a choice. You choose between options. But I think that's a good policy. Future-proofing FAMPO and the jurisdictions is a policy. So electric vehicles. Have we all realized what the implication is for our funding for roads of having electric vehicles? Have you thought about that connection? I've been trying to tell the policy committee this.
Gas tax, yeah.
When everybody goes electric, there's not 1 cent of gas tax you're going to get out of those vehicles. And I'm certainly not arguing we shouldn't electrify. I'm just saying it creates policy problems that you then have to solve. You've got to think through them. Yes, let's electrify, but then yes, also let's try and find a policy that can help us raise the funds to build another bridge, another tunnel, another road, another bus route, another whatever else. Because we're not going to get it with the gas tax 10, 15 years from now. Already the gas tax doesn't cover the maintenance and construction of all the roads. Already, that's been for years, right? Decide ultimately on what policies we should be following. This is how I'm trying to hang that to the vision. Next one. Studies, I'm not going to go into this a lot, you're going to hear about that tonight, but we have the East-West study going on, the VCR Trail study. We've got a freight summit coming, which will produce a report. I've been asked to facilitate a workshop with suggestion for the policy committee. We're starting to talk now about transit-oriented development. We had a first meeting with Spotsylvania to talk about development around the Spotsylvania train station. Project studies should result in projects. Studies that don't result in projects get put on the shelf and we forget about them, and they're nice to have, but we want projects to come out of those studies. A lot of new grants coming out of Washington with the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. We may be able to tackle some larger projects over the next 5 to 15 years. There seems to be an interest in 1 or 2 mega projects in the region in future from different quarters, different projects, a range of different ones. One example, the Virginia Central Railway. I've showed this to the policy committee because, and the newspaper picked up on it as well, because this which VDOT is now taking over from the city. This is part of the Smart Scale application here. We're looking at options in the VCR Trail Brisbane Tunnel study of how to cross I-95, how to cross a better way to cross US 1 and Route 3. And then the East-West study is looking, and you'll see that tonight from Chris, What do we do here when you get to the other side? Yes, there is the trail along the river, but what about getting to houses and shops? And they're going to show you some suggestions which we work with on them. Next one. But that's an example of it. It's a mega project. When you add all the pieces together, there are to put space for a bike path or a multi-use path on this bridge. And you're the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, the Policy Committee. We discussed it, asked VDOT to consider finding a way to, on that bridge when it gets rebuilt. There's a Linda, can you remember, $60-something million put aside to renovate this bridge. And so we asked, can you try to find a way to put a bike path on there? It's not easy. I will give VDOT that credit. It's not going to be easy, but we've asked, FAMPO's asked them to look at that. Next one. Funding. There's significant new and existing grant opportunities coming up. Often literally every week there's a new kind of funding opportunity, a new grant, a new whatever, request for you know. And Paul was saying as well, that it's like, we need to have staff members full-time just investigating the grants, finding out what you need, drawing up application forms, going to the jurisdictions or going to FAMPO to get whatever you need. It's a big thing. We should be aiming, though, to increase transportation funding that is available for all modes. And here's the point I was making earlier, we should prepare for gas taxes to have a less significant role in future transportation funding. So what more and more that there's much better cooperation among our jurisdictions and state partners in FAMPO. I don't know if you're hearing that, but I'm certainly hearing from people saying, it's just a good vibe now. Yes, we disagree. Jamie and I sometimes disagree, but we don't do it in a way that, oh, now we're going to fight and have a guerrilla war. We say, hey, what about this other option? Or I don't think that, or whatever. And you'll see that. You know, Paul and I, my predecessor, sometimes disagree, but we try to do it in a friendly spirit and try to work out a compromise. And so I'm getting the impression that there's a greater spirit of cooperation here, and we should build on this to achieve better project rollout. FAMPO staff continue to meet with our stakeholders. Resignation. This continues in 2022. Maintaining staff is a challenge over the last year and is still. Almost all of our jurisdictions have at least one transportation planner or transportation staff member as a vacancy. And FAMPO has. We're busy interviewing right now to hire. So we need to fill those positions to help us do all of the jobs we do, but also apply for those grants, because someone has to do that work. A grant just doesn't apply for itself. Next one. Thank you very much. That's just for me to try and say, we're going to get into weeds over the next year, but this is the big, very high level kind of hanger that I'm trying to put everything on. There's a system to the thinking at FAMPO. We're not just running after every little thing. Some grants we're not going to apply for. We would encourage you to, but we're not going to apply for every grant because we can't. We will apply for some. We're hoping our jurisdictions and state partners will apply for some. Together we'll eat this elephant one bite at a time. Any questions?
Not a question, just a comment. Just wanted to say that I'm really glad that you are on the FAMPO team, and in service of this area, because, you know, bike and pedestrian stuff hasn't always been at the forefront of the conversation, so we're really lucky to have you.
Thank you. We have a good team. I'm not here on my own. We have a bike and pedestrian expert over here in Carrie. We have Becky, we have Coley, who's doing a great job of our public engagement, but thanks for the compliment. We're trying hard to knit everything together. Did you have a question?
Did you?
Sorry. Is there, you may have mentioned this, but in terms of grant proposals, RFPs, RFQs, RFIs, things of that nature for budgets that come to FAMPO, how do you keep track of those things?
So we have some, I mean, Linda's the expert here. She'll tell you that we have regular funding streams which come to us annually. So we get an annual grant from VDOT from the Federal Highway. We get an annual grant from the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, which is, you know, FTA, Federal Transit Authority. And then we apply for additional grants to help us with specific projects. We apply for some grants for the East-West Mobility Study. And then FAMPO also gets an allocation of congestion mitigation and air quality funding. And what's STBG? Mine's just going blank.
Surface transportation.
Surface transportation, block grant funding. That also comes to us annually. And then FAMPO decides how to allocate that to transit or roadways or bike and ped paths. And I must say, I'm really impressed with how much money we put into bike paths and sidewalks and that recently. Almost every project that we have in Smart Scale, there's some bike element to it. So Smart Scale is project funding. It doesn't fund FAMPO as an institution. So those other funding forms fund FAMPO as an institution. CMAC and STBG fund projects, and Smart Scale funds projects. Linda?
Yeah, they're all in FAMPO's budget too. So if you look in the UPWP, it talks about how they're going to staff their programs. If you look in the TIP, it talks about how they're going to staff their projects. And I keep wanting to call it RSTP, but the SPBG funding, and all the other like PL funding, those are pretty consistent. Fortunately, they've not decreased, not the same over the years. Smart Scale really has bumped up the bike ped as a player as part of the project, which it always should have. But again, because we have folks like Ian and his team, they're not going to forget about it. You know, it's part of the forefront of their mind. So,
Whole bunch of bike and pedestrian paths we've applied for in this round as well.
yeah.
So I think that's the answer.
Do you have like paperwork? Do you have filing paperwork? Do you keep it in a tracking system?
What?
Your grant proposal processes?
Can I, real quickly?
Yeah.
The Smart Scale has a portal.
Oh, so you can do
Anybody
that.
can get on that. So if they are putting in 4 applications for Smart Scale funding, all of those are transparent and online.
Got it.
The annual budget of GWRC has all our staff, and we rent the facilities, and all that kind of internal funding is in the annual budget, so that you can get online. The GWRC website has got the entire budget for all the entities that occupy it.
I did actually think I looked at that.
And then CMAC STBG, we have a spreadsheet once a year.
I was going to say that
And you can-
monster spreadsheet.
You can find that on the FAMPO website, but particularly if you go to the agendas of previous meetings. Once a year, about April, May-ish, each year in that agenda, you will find the whole spreadsheet, and it gives you every dollar that we spend on those projects.
Very good.
And if modifications or amendments affect funding, all the documents get changed at FAMPO and VDOT.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that was important. Because in my head, I was just thinking, side note, thinking if there was a way to automatically get a ticker that says, hey, look, grant, this is the deadline.
So many great, it's a good thing, I'm not complaining. But there are,
You're asking about a forest.
yes.
Really hard to, I get an email every other week.
You really need probably a staff member
Sticky notes and files.
dedicated just to that, right?
Really do.
Yeah, but
There is a website called grants.gov that lists all of them.
I'm on that website. and
Scary
I-
place. It's a scary place. Yes. We try not to go there. Scary place.
Thank you.
Kevin, over to you.
Yep. All right, moving on to public comments, or anyone from the public who would like to comment at this time? All right, move on.
We did receive a letter that was public comment.
Okay.
Our public outreach person will read it.
So this woman came to the policy committee, meeting the other night. My name is Margaret Mock, and I'm 81 years old. I'm a walker, and I've walked in my neighborhood, North Berry Farm, and nearby subdivisions for more than 30 years. I have a walking partner, Jenny Crispina, who's a neighbor, and she was there with her that night. We walk about an hour each day. The subdivisions in and around Ferry Farm where we walk are lovely, but there's a major problem with them. They're dangerous. There are no sidewalks, there are no walking trails. We share the road with cars, trucks, school buses, and garbage trucks. How nice it would be to utilize a convenient walking trail. I'm not here to request that you design a walking trail for our neighborhood. I am here to request that you proceed with your original plan for the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail. We've read about these plans for a few years and look forward to the recent completion of the new Chatham Bridge so that the trail could finally be completed. We were disappointed when we heard that the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail would end at the Chatham Bridge. We really can't understand such a decision. A new pedestrian crossing complete with walk and don't walk signals was opened across Kings Highway to connect Ferry Road and George Washington Way. It's perfect for anyone wishing to park in the Ferry Farm Shopping Center and use the crossing lights to access the Ferry Farm into the trail. In addition, there are approximately 50 parking spaces and 2 lots at George Washington Way and home that can be utilized. We've also heard that trash left by walkers on the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail might be a concern. We think those concerns are unfounded. We've walked on many of the city trails, the Canal Trail, the Rappahannock River Heritage Trail, and the Virginia Central Railway Trail, to name a few. And we've noticed that only small amounts of trash. Some of these trails about neighborhoods, and we haven't heard complaints from those neighbors. Sorry. We find the trails in the city popular and well used, with an estimated population of approximately 50,000 in South Stafford. We think the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail will be well utilized. We also note that there are not as many trails in South Stafford as in the city. The Belmont Ferry Farm Trail would help correct that imbalance. Completion of the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail can only mean increased tourism for both Belmont and George Washington Way and home. We assume both of these tourism-driven sites would welcome more visitors. Please reconsider any of the decisions that are made to scrap plans for completing the Belmont Ferry Farm Trail. If you reinstate your plans and if you build it in my lifetime, I promise I will walk the trail and I will not drive.
That's a great letter.
Thank you for forwarding that on to me.
We should stick them on that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Put that on your wall, Brian. Motivation.
Does anyone know
Put it on in the board chambers.
impediment for building a trail was? Yes. Okay. Out loud. Yeah, do all of you know what the impediment was?
What?
Does the committee here know what the impediment was?
The impediment was ultimately funding, and the board decided that they didn't want to allocate the funds.
I thought that it was already funded.
Well, there was matching funds involved, so.
Is there a chance for that trail in the future, maybe?
I would think so. I would hope. That project, I think, started around 2000. Just to give you an idea of how long the process took, so.
For funding,
The matching?
I don't know how all the funding is calculated, and I know like rental, like equipment rental, grounding, weed barriers, all that stuff, but when paying for funding, do we look at, because this is a question that's not so many volunteer organizations in this area, building, stuff. They do a lot in Prince National Forest. There's a group that just popped up, they're trying to get they're trying to get more involved in trail maintenance, trail building, construction. So the volunteer hours, like we calculate for search and rescue teams, volunteer fire departments, search response teams, we submit our hours and that gets calculated into a fund saved for the county. There's a way to calculate that into a budget for the planning based on the amount of volunteer organizations to reduce the proposed cost dollar amount of the work hour cost for volunteer organizations. Plan more people.
Yeah, in-kind contributions.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, to answer your question, I'd have to look at the, or get with our transportation staff to see what the criteria in the grant are as far as allowing that sort of thing. I said it was funding, and that I still believe is the primary reason. I do recall also there was some pushback from local residents in that area, so that was likely another factor, and we've run into that on other projects. I know VDOT had for the Leland Road project, for example. So, yeah, that's sometimes a challenge as well, but.
About Leland Road.
Yeah, so. Anyway, all right, was that all? Move on to discussion items, east-west study updates.
I apologize. We thought that Cass Patterson was going to present, but we have Mr. Chris Daly.
Yes, Kathy can speak.
Kathy, can you say something?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
I'll turn her up.
Just really quiet. Very quiet.
Also might be on my side.
There we go.
Oh, can you hear me? Test, test?
Try again?
That's the thing, next slide. You just have to tell her to.
Go a little louder. Can you go anymore?
I think I have,
Yeah, you have it all the way up.
there's a little bit further.
Either way.
Kathy, can you speak?
Yes, can you hear me? This is a test?
Yes,
Yes.
Perfect. Apologies for not being there.
Oh, we're glad you're not here.
What's,
Can we?
She sent a whole new presentation, I guess.
she did?
Kathy, is it that important? Can we just go with what we've got loaded?
Or she could send it to the conference room. I can't access it.
What's the conference room email address? Just give it to her quickly.
Conference at
I can.
Kathy, can you hear that?
Can someone write it in the chat?
Kathy, did you get? What?
Write it
in the chat.
I can send it pretty quickly, actually. If she sent it to me. Oh, she sent it 3 minutes ago. That's why,
Okay.
that's why you don't have it.
Send it to the conference room.
I've got it. I'll send.
Thanks. So, sorry for the brief pause here.
It may take me a minute. I have to unzip it and stuff.
So I am the project manager for the East-West Mobility Study. I think everybody is aware of phase one. So what I'm doing right now is leading phase two. For phase two, it's multimodal, so we have really 3 prongs active right now. We spent a lot of our initial effort on transit options that we're exploring. We're also looking at 13 corridors and future congestion on those roads and what we might do to deal with some of those issues. But the third prong would be for pedestrian, ped bike projects that were identified. There were 5, I think, that were initially identified as part of phase 1. We've since the connectivity to the Spotsylvania Rail State VRE station and the Brook station. There we go.
Chris, if I can just make a comment while you guys are getting ready for these presentations. The fifth bike and ped project that we had originally put in the scope was to connect the BPR trail to the Fredericksburg train station. And that has been removed because, as you know, that is now the subject of a current smart scale application that has already gone in. So there would be no point asking VHP to re-engineer something which VDOT is busy engineering for us and putting us in. Is that the right one there?
So I was starting to say that 2 of those are directly related to transit. So we are prioritizing those 2 projects right now so that we can incorporate those into our overall transit study report. And we'll be proceeding to the TAC on August 1st to talk about those, including those 2 projects related to the rail station access. And then the other 2 are, speaking of Chatham Bridge, one of the projects is looking at connectivity over mention a little bit of preliminary engineering, which will then help us to get a better understanding of costs associated with those improvement projects. Today, we'd like to review those 4 projects with you and get some feedback from you so that we can advance them, especially those first 2, those highest priority. And keep going, Coley. All right, keep going. All right, so the first one is the connectivity to the Brook station. This is sort of the 2 corridors highlighted here that we think that we can make that connection. What we are interested in doing is providing a shared use path, or SUP. And that's what we'll talk about in a second. This is just a better depiction of where we think there are some options versus where we know the preferred alignment. This preferred alignment along Mount Hope Church Road is essentially, that's established now, that will be that connection. But we do have some options on the north to connect up to the downtown area, and then also then down to the south. It's kind of hard to see on this screen, but a couple of options for ultimately connecting to the station there. This part in the middle is, of course, the Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail. While an SUP might be desired, that's such a low volume roadway, low speed roadway, it might making use of the utility corridor in that easement. And putting an SUP, obviously there's some advantages to that, the land's there. There's not really much that you can do with that land anyway, so why not put a trail there? Alternatively, it would be bringing it down Old Potomac Church Road. Okay, and then down at the south side, got some options for bringing it around the west side of the station, or a rail with trail to make that final connection to the station. So we wanted to maybe kind of think that the courthouse road maybe wasn't the best solution, even though that's what was area. Of course, that would have to get formally adopted, but just trying to lead the way there. Go ahead, Olin. Okay, this is just an aside, is that the findings here coincidentally jive very much with what we were thinking for this corridor through this other effort, the pipeline, Project Pipeline at the VDOT initiative. VHB happens to be leading that study as well, and we're also thinking about potentially making use of that Dominion corridor, that easement. So, forward. So this can be challenging. Of course, we also have wetlands and streaming. We pulled some GIS layers, and we're starting to investigate that as well, how we might be able to circumnavigate, or what cost impacts that might be as far as purchasing credits, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then, of course, the property owners and just, you know, trying to work through all that. A lot of that will come with, you know, this next phase of our study and doing that preliminary engineering, walking the site, and trying to get a better feel for what that ultimate alignment area would be, but we recognize that these are constraints, and these constraints will have impacts on the cost.
Chris, would it be better to hold comments or provide them as you go? And an apartments project currently on the east side. They're extending the road down. We were able to successfully negotiate trail easements from those developers through their properties, and it generally follows the force main line coming off the new pump station they put down there on Accokeek Creek. So for a good portion like that view there, pretty much that whole stretch between Civil War Park up to the top of the screen, we have trail easement for.
All right, excellent.
And I know John Holden, the Economic Development Director, has shown a lot of interest in this project, and he also reached out to the hospital at one point, and they were interested in partnering on
order of many privately owned parcels. So have the utility easements, but underlying landowners to deal with on that orange line as well.
Yeah, we suspected that could be the case. The other project, we noticed the same thing, and it might be challenging. It might be even a non-starter. But that's the next project. But
that force main line, I walked that route when they were putting it in, and it is very much benched into a hill. But there seems to be some good space there to accommodate that. There might have to be some retaining walls here and there, but hopefully it should require minimal grading at least through that stretch.
okay. So it sounds like this northern segment, then we're thinking that the old church road is the way to go.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
We still have to negotiate with property owners on the north side of those developments, but it seems like more of the low-hanging fruit at this point, just because of the easements we have in place.
Okay, great. You can keep going then, Coley. On the other way, okay? All right, so then the southern section, this is where I was talking about the potential for rail with trail on the north side. reach, Andrew Chapel, Andrew Chapel. The alternative is to continue down along that same Mount Hope Church Road alignment to Brook Road and come from the west side with an SUP along Brook Road. Going and we just kind of point some of the constraints that we see with respect to those two options. So for example, the green dash line, which is the rail width trail, obviously there's less interaction with vehicles. Of course, you'll interact with them on the east side, but as you're in the rail alignment, of course, there's no vehicle. So that's a safer option from that perspective. We're not aware of any is that we would be using an existing road with the Mount Hope Church Road. So you already have that infrastructure in place. You're on a street is more comfortable, or adjacent to a street is a more comfortable situation for pedestrian, for cyclists. So you've got nice wide right-of-way there already. But unfortunately, then you would have the interaction with traffic. So, and also the point I made earlier with all the driveways. So pros and cons. I think the continuing down the Mount Church is an obvious and direct connection, of course.
Project. That's in the back of my mind, so that's one thing I'd want to look into. I thought
We've got something from Alex too.
Yeah.
There has to be space on the rail right of way for 4 tracks eventually. So you've got to make sure you don't get too close to the existing rail tracks, but that's everywhere along the corridor from DC to Richmond. The RPT and CSX have a deal, and the deal is that one day there will be 4 tracks, which means that you've got to allow for enough space for the 4 tracks, plus a fence, I would say, and then your bike path. So there's that thing to consider. Over the road.
Yeah, Alex has input on that, Ian.
And I can't remember the detail, but
Yeah, here we go.
Alex, feel free to speak to.
He says, for the green line, there's no width under the CSX bridge over Andrew Chapel to accommodate multimodal unless CSX reconstructs as part of the third rail project. Along Brook Road is probably the best option, but would require a bridge over the creek that you have in blue.
I mean,
bridge are mixing back into traffic.
The road, yeah.
I mean, I think in the short line.
That, where Andrew Chapel is, Brian, that's where that real narrow bridge opening is?
Yeah, yeah.
That would be a challenge.
Yeah, it's almost is it a single lane through there? It's
tight.
real narrow.
It's tight.
It's real narrow.
Yeah, we can probably skip this slide since we've already addressed it. The one thing I will point out is that, if we do go down Old Church Road, then ultimately we'd want some sort of facility to connect it back to the East Coast Greenway line. So that's what you see is that dash line there.
On Hospital Boulevard.
Along Hospital Boulevard.
transport to the hospital is such a big deal, and having roadways available and space available, especially with like ambulance and what have you, going back and forth, and, you know, collectively speaking about traffic lights and emergency vehicles going back and forth. But to make sure there's plenty of room for emergencies, and also with Red Bus, I was thinking, you know, there might be some way to make a direct path between, I don't know, like, common destinations like Garrisonville Road or Route 17 rather, the hospital. Community, or retirement rather, community. I think that's really important thing that you're bringing to the table, which is, you know, transport on the rails and opening it up to make that possible. So.
Absolutely, and I know we're not here to talk about our transit projects, but that is a focus area of one of our transit.
Sorry, I'm fairly new at this. You gotta forgive me.
Yes, obviously understanding that a major generator and attraction, so we have the same goal of providing better access to the hospital.
Yeah. That should be doable, I would.
Keep going.
A little spur that goes over.
So the easement we have comes out at the, basically the south end of Marion Manor, off there, off Old Potomac Church Road. It's directly west of where you see the ball fields for the school.
Right.
You probably need a spur. You probably wouldn't make a lot of sense to reroute the whole trail to the school and back.
Right.
A little spur to the skate rink.
Exactly.
You know, I mean,
In an ideal world.
just give me a crayon, I'll show you a bike path that does it all.
Right.
Call it cookie path.
Something funding.
And there are also trails around the hospital, so, you know, this could easily link into that. So.
Okay.
Anybody think this is a bad idea?
This is the wrong committee for that.
Next one.
Keep going, there we go. All right, so again, generally showing the corridors that we're trying to connect to the station, represented by the star down there. Of course, like the hospital, we've got other major generators, for example, Germanna Community College, that we're trying to provide that connectivity. Keep going, just to interest of time, just showing that, again, there is a some options to consider is the connections up to the north, as well as this area in here, a couple of alternatives to consider. So we can just keep going. It is in this version. Okay, so this is the project that is placing a shared use path on a new bridge structure on the south side. So it would make a nice connection for us, for what we're talking about, continuing that connection all the way to the area rail station. So, yeah, and there's the proposed or planned Germanna shared use path that then provides that. At Benchmark, to the west side of Benchmark. Apparently there's a jet fuel pipeline on the west side of the rail, so we wanted to stay to the east of the rail, and there's good space between Benchmark Road and the rail to place a shared use path. The other option, and of course, there's kind of sub-options there. Just like with the previous project, there was a thought of, could we make use of this utility easement? And we'll see in another slide that there's some challenges with that, one of which brought up Becky, is that it's not a right-of-way, it's individual. Just showing with the existing, this is what it would look like with a shared use path. So a nice, that should be 12 foot, not 11 foot. There's plenty of room for it. All right, keep going. Okay, of course, we've got some pros and cons associated with these. So the Benchmark Road would be great because it would connect up to the East Coast Greenway and other land uses to the north. But there are a lot of properties that we'd be dealing with, of course. Utility conflicts, the overhead power lines that we have to deal with, a lot of driveways. Again, not perfect, but we can deal with this. We can engineer around those things. The other option that we were talking about, the utility corridors, I mentioned that. Other environmental features that present a concern. Some stream crossings as well. So here we're talking about then when we get down to the south, how do we bring them down to Mills and ultimately to the station? So you can see the use on the west side of the rail using Eagle Drive. That's another very low volume, low speed roadway that could be a mixed traffic type of a situation, or maybe a phased approach like we were talking about earlier. Similarly, Benchmark Road is an option if we just carry the SUP or some sort of mixed-use facility. Both of those take you sort of out of your way to then bring you back to the station. So is there a more direct path? For example, many environmental constraints.
That's actually a sensible compromise.
Yeah, it does seem like it.
Yeah.
What are they?
Another is continuing for a short segment rail with trail on the east side of the rail. But we might, again, have capacity constraints here. Right now, it looks like there's room to fit a shared use path comfortably, but as Ian pointed out, there's still potential for an additional track, and any coordination with the railroad presents some challenges. So, but those would be the more direct paths straight to the station. Okay. And then finally, a couple of options for where we tie into the preferred alignment along Mills Drive. And I think the green is the obvious choice. There does seem to be a right-of-way there on the south side of Mills Road to put a shared use path. We did explore whether it made sense to maybe deviate from Mills just to get people off, away from adjacent to traffic. And you've got a nice calm residential street through there that could be conducive to maybe not a shared use path because of all the properties and driveways, but perhaps maybe you know, a shared condition for the cyclist with a sidewalk for pedestrians. Again, it deviates a little bit. Just another option that we were exploring, but I think the green dash line is probably the preferred choice.
Until you have to go before those residents and ask them about it.
Exactly.
Can I just ask, Chairman, are there any representatives from Spotsylvania here tonight? I don't see
No.
Jake.
There are not, they are both out of,
Okay, well, I mean, it's
they're
fine
away.
to show everyone else what's happening. I think you've already presented this
He has.
to the Spotsylvania
Yeah.
team, so at least they've already seen.
Yes. And I think there seemed to be general consensus that staying along Mills was preferred. We were exploring all possibilities. Anything else related to that project?
Sorry, I'm just full of questions.
No,
I
that's
like
great.
the presentation. Just wanted to make sure, when I said train, I meant the VRE, and that the Route 17, and I like, you know, the concept that everything is, that you're doing. I just want to clarify. Appreciate your presentation. Thank you for letting me ask the question.
Absolutely. Do you have a new question, or with this?
Not at the moment.
Okay, great. We'll keep moving on then, because we have two more projects that we want to talk to you about. The other was that connectivity to the town, down to the town center, through the big Carl E. Silver shopping center. A lot of activity, a lot of traffic. So it'd be nice to provide some better alternatives for alternative modes. So keep going, that's the study area, broader study area. And for the most part, we concur that the ideal path is, you know, a widened Carl D. Silver Parkway that would accommodate a shared use path. Where we had some thoughts on maybe alternatives was up on this northern section, the final connection between Allen and Falkville Avenue. And we had some thoughts about, we were weighing the alternative of staying along the Carl D. Silver Parkway alignment versus maybe there's some opportunity with future development coming along this parcel here. You can see that right now that's farmland, it's undeveloped, but bringing it along the backside of the current development. Challenges or potential cons, you can keep going. With that,
This is the city's,
yeah, this is a small area plan.
So would that be recommending removing those back parking spaces behind the buildings to create the path? Because it goes the parking spaces into a tree line bordering the farmland back there.
your lady on the line,
Kathy.
Kathy, sorry, Kathy. She's been talking through all those, but I don't know whether she has a comment.
Yeah, Kathy, did you want to provide some additional detail there?
Yeah, so this small area plan, it expands into the surplus parking that has been, that really provides too much parking for the shopping area. So it expands into the west and allows for a shared use path to be included on the west side. And we just think that it would be a great opportunity to extend that north as well, and to have that green line that we see, the dash green line, and just maybe take those same concepts of expanding into surplus parking and really use those as an opportunity to include a shared use path or some kind of multimodal access.
Go ahead.
No, if we see that as surplus parking, or, you know, if there's more capacity than necessary, the owners might not.
Don't feel embarrassed at using that phrase. The city, in their small area plan and in the public meeting that they had in Central Park, made it very clear that the city's official position is that there's too much parking for the retail that is available. So it's not an awkward thing to say. I think it's fairly accepted that that is the case.
So that was one thing I wanted to clarify. The parking out there is not required per ordinance. It's in excess of what the ordinance requires.
I can't answer that question. I don't know if Jamie knows, but I know that the city said publicly in that presentation, in the bowling, the baseball stadium, when they had the public hearings, they said, it's our view that there's too much parking here. They said to the developers in the meeting, please come and build more stores, restaurants, and other amenities, but do not build a single parking bay when you do that, because we have too much parking. I'm not saying that the land's free, here, have it, but I'm just saying that the city does not believe that they should have any more parking created there.
Is it because it gets overcrowded? Like, if there's too much?
There's only one place that it gets overcrowded, and that's around the baseball stadium and the conference center. The rest of the Central Park is almost never full, the parking.
So the chairman of the Fredericksburg Planning Commission went out on Black Friday with his camera, took pictures of hundreds of open parking spaces across Central Park. And that's always what developers say. They say, we're building a retail space, we have to build to Black Friday.
Well, you know,
they still built too much.
and the retail environment has changed over recent years, so there's probably a lot less demand for that now than there used to be.
It's good news for transit people, it's good news for bike and ped people, because there's space in Central Park, and we're looking at proposals of using that for good purposes.
So, do you think it would ever happen?
Store cast, probably the only day in school.
Never?
In this location.
To even have built parking lots for one day of the year was a ludicrous notion in the first.
Like, the biggest event in this area annually is the historic half. Marathon. That's the largest population, I believe, is the largest population density, episodic event in this area.
Why I passed out beers that day.
Even then, we don't fill up all the parking spaces available. So if that one episodic event cannot maximize the parking, there's no justification anybody, I think logically, to argue for retaining parking spots.
And honestly, an event like that, you should be utilizing transit from commuter parking lots and that sort of thing, not building for that.
Because the sidewalks are adequate for casual shoppers, but I think they're planning on building more apartment complexes and stuff in that area, so.
Traffic engineering 101 too, is you don't design for the worst case scenario. You know, typically from a traffic standpoint, it's your 30th worst. So yeah, I agree. And I ran that race several years ago, and I think I walked a quarter marathon to run a half marathon.
So I had a thing to add. The city's small area plan, Area 1 plan, calls for, actually, can you go back to that last one right there? Calls for the extension of Gordon Shelton Boulevard south between Fall Hill and Cowan, with the expectation that that would be proffered as part of development on that big, long, open space right up there.
That's good.
So the idea is to, make sure that's included in the development.
Yeah, Carrie and I were talking that the orange line would be something that you would keep on there, and when that parcel is developed, they could meander it. So that's solid. That road right there is planned to go right through the green, that parcel.
And I assume you all know that the Cowan Boulevard road has got, I argue with the city, but they've laid down a multi-use path, concrete, that goes to Jamie's building, and Jamie hasn't given us the details, but she tells me that the city's working on an exciting redevelopment for bike and pedestrians around the transit center, and I'm itching to see.
I actually opened that today,
Oh, wow.
and I was like, who did I say I was going to send this to?
Go with me, because the point is that in this study, we're not engineering that portion, but we've already got asphalt or concrete laid all the way down to Jamie's building. Now Jamie and the city are working on redeveloping for bikes and pedestrians around the transit center. And then remember, you carry on down that little road and you're in the university. And part of the brief was, we're going to connect the university up to this point, but then how do we get them through Central Park? Because they end up on a road there. And that's the brief to BHP is connect Fall Hills Bike and Pedestrian Path, connect the one that we're reworking on Boulevard, and connect Spotsylvania Town Center and all the shops there, so people can actually use their bike, do something like shopping or going to the cinema or going to, so students can come from the university and go, yeah, there's a great need for this in this area.
Are there places to lock up your bike? If you go to the cinema?
Very good question.
Not yet.
There can be.
There's I think in front of the Trek bicycle shop down there, they have bike locks. I don't I can't recall bike stands anywhere else in that area.
When we get the building listing, and we ask BDOT to come and lay the concrete, I think we'll be sure to ask for some lock-up facilities at the same time.
Is it zoned for industrial use?
Is what, Central Park?
The central.
Commercial.
Commercial, not industrial,
Yeah.
though.
No,
Is that,
commercial.
you know, I'm thinking, because Amazon just created a huge facility in Fredericksburg, Stafford area, and, you know, hypothetical, go ahead. I'm sorry.
2 facilities.
2 facilities,
So
right.
far.
2 facilities. And imagine the possibility of another Amazon, or maybe it's not an Amazon, maybe it's a logistics or something, and, you know, their truckers come here as a stopover from, you know, DC down to Richmond. I don't think industrial is healthy for our environment, but I will say that if there's ample parking, I would much rather that terrain go towards biking and walkability than to industrial platforms.
Yeah, so this is currently commercial, restaurants, shops, and that's what the zoning is for. And no, not yet. I made a few comments in the public meeting saying I wish there was more multi-use here because there's no residential. The residential is next door in the zone to the north, and there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit that Spotsylvania is now putting into the Spotsylvania town center.
We're gonna need a very robust crossing of Plank
It's not allowed currently to build residential, but the city does say publicly that they would be open to it if a developer applied. Currently not zoned for residential.
Yeah, and there's one property that is zoned as flex space, trying to encourage like warehouse sort of.
That's what I was thinking.
But it's only one piece of land that really they're looking at that. It's a big piece of open space, not on that map.
You might have somebody who just comes in.
Anybody from the city or Spotsylvania think this is a bad idea or can see an aspect of this which wouldn't work?
I think it's a good idea. I just had a quick question. Carl D. Silver Parkway, there's, as you know, a lot of unsignalized access points.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a good way of mitigating or addressing bike ped safety at all of those, other than just the basic, you know, crosswalk striping and signage and that sort of thing?
And that really is kind of sort of the next step when we get down to that granularity and engineering those crossings, and certainly we have plenty of examples of how we've handled those challenges elsewhere. I wouldn't dare talk about access consolidation at this point. That's sort of a dirty term as well. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of different techniques that you can use to give priority to the pedestrian and the cyclist over the ingress-egress. So not only making that movement more conspicuous, but other techniques. Yeah. Calm the speeds and.
Just at a high level for everyone's benefit, VHB is doing phase 2 of the study, which is 13 roadways, 4 bike paths, a couple of transit projects, one big transit project, and then once FAMPO has agreed which projects they want, that they're happy with, they like the basic concept and the alignment, VHB then will at the end do engineering work on the ones that we're going to submit for funding applications. So part of this project at the end is to say, okay, now how exactly do we avoid accidents? How do we, where we put the bollards with it? So they will also do that at the end of the project. So this is first looking at the alignment and where we want to do it and whether there's general problems in what they're proposing, and then they will come back at the end and show here's the engineering and what it'll cost and all that to actually submit it for funding. So they will do that as well later on in the process. It's not
great.
Yeah. Oh, great. This is not the end of the process.
No, this is
right. This is are we happy with the concept? Are we happy with the area we're putting these things? Are we happy with the basic alignment? Are we happy? It's not going to create other problems, that kind of thing.
That's why you've got us to talk about it, we can brainstorm, right?
Exactly, because we don't want to go to that level of detail unless we have
Right.
reached a consensus on the general alignment. So, Carrie, you brought up a good point about the crossing of Plank Road, and that was another reason why in this corridor, because through the pipeline study, as Linda can tell you, we had a public outreach effort, and this was for the whole Route 3 corridor. This crossing was prioritized as the number one where people would like to see a crossing. And so our concepts related to Route 3 developed some crossings at this location, as well as much bigger concepts to deal with the traffic, but that's not going forward with this round of smart scale, but we're going to continue to vet that and pursue a crossing here.
Through the Burger King there?
Right straight through drive-through.
That road is called Mall Courts,
Right.
but it doesn't.
Get you to the mall, right? Well, with all that residential development at the mall, in the long term, we're gonna have to decide what our priorities are for that location. We're gonna have to get people who live there safely across the road.
If you go on the VDOT website, you can see some concepts that we derived that do punch through Mall Court to the mall ring road and make better use of that and provide better connectivity and alleviate, you know, the 3 or 4 spigots that feed the mall. Okay, I think we can keep going.
As we do these things, if anybody thinks there's a problem with one of these, then
We used to leave that way.
I didn't realize this.
Interferes with the interchange too much.
Speaking of,
Yeah, exactly. So you can see we've already done that 30% engineering to think through some of the sidewalks and the crossing of Route 3 here.
And it doesn't take the Burger King.
Not the crossing, no.
No, I mean,
Some of those other concepts.
that Burger
might.
King's right there.
But, yeah. But again, nothing's moving forward.
it's just in the shade now.
Traffic flow study on.
I don't even Burger King for 20 years.
I go up there a lot, and I don't find it to be very busy. It's like 2 lanes one way, 2 lanes another way, maybe just when I go, but, I mean, is there heavy traffic that goes through there, where maybe you couldn't at some point shut down one lane and turn it into bike?
A roadway reconfiguration, maybe?
Or do it
What we
different
call
times of day or something, where you got 2 lanes and then.
we might want one of those for a BRT bus.
I mean, I go up there and
You're right.
I don't find it to be super busy, when I'm traveling on that corridor.
That'll change when exit 131 opens, which is
All the competing dreams.
Area 1
Named
plan.
Christopher Road.
It's in the Area 1 plan.
Yeah.
That was one of the things they put in there.
Okay.
What was that?
There's in the city's Area 1 plan, there is a proposed interchange about a mile north of 130, and they call it exit 131.
Okay, so
Because you got all those lanes, you might as well put some cars on them. That's kind of the thinking.
well, feeder off.
Yeah, so it would come off the CD lanes.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, that's.
So I have some feelings.
And that's really to alleviate the 95-3 and that segment of 3 that's so over-congested is to provide an alternative
Yeah.
off 95.
But I know for me, if I'm coming up Cal and going to Fall Hill, which I've done on my bike, I just go along the back of the shopping center. I bicycle all the way across and don't have to go deal with any traffic. You can do it, just kind of weave your way through. And I'd probably still do that rather than get on the main drag, so. I like the, kind of the back way to get some places.
The orange line, is that not the best way?
That's essentially, now we were showing it on the.
You could yell off Cal and then just pop behind the shopping center and work your way over to Fall Hill. Yeah, you can do that now.
Back there, there's only a small, that's what originally I was asking about, is just a small strip of maybe 12 to 20 parking spots back there. Not even the whole strip back there, but you go off the back of the parking spots and you hit the farm tree line, the property divide. So there's plenty of space in it, there's nobody ever really uses it. The back there.
Right, and actually,
You run into people drinking that.
that does bring up one of the concerns that we had identified with that alignment was that that's a less secure alignment than the main drag, as you said. Yeah. But again, there's measures that we could take, lighting, other. So, Where do we leave off? Okay, so this is just showing, sort of what that could look like. This is the proposed.
Sidewalk on the left and the shared use path on the right.
That should say existing, right? And then if you go to the next slide.
No, go back. Look on the right-hand side
There we
there.
go, existing, we can't see it because
Because of the, you need to move the camera. There you go.
There we go.
That's existing, and then the next one shows the proposed.
The next slide.
I think it's Troy's there. There on the right.
We converted it to a shared use path, yeah.
And Spotsy and the city have seen these, has Mike Craig seen these drawings yet?
So these all went through Spotsy's, no, they haven't.
Yeah, I don't think Mike has seen these.
Yeah, I would make sure.
So this is the first time I've seen this version of it as well. So we're only seeing, so you're the first people to see this, this particular slide, set of slides. So if I can ask Coley tomorrow if you could email a copy of this to all the members of the committee, and we'll also send one, Jamie, to Mike, Craig, and Chuck, and yourself as another copy. And Jacob has definitely seen the Spotsylvania train station set with Paul and the others, but it's no harm in sending them another copy of this.
Yeah, I'm just talking about just the slides near the mall. They've got opinions, and I think the city.
We absolutely must hear their opinions.
Is there, I don't know if it's on the slide or not, after your 10-foot span, is there going to be another like 5-foot section to the east?
Meaning like a buffer on this side between.
Yeah, like, is there a proposed width? Because right now, we're only talking less than a 6-foot reduction in parking space, which a normal parking space is what, 10, I think,
9
feet is normal, so about half of that whole area is being sequestered.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, bare minimum, you need per standard, the 2 foot of shoulder, graded shoulder on either side, or if there's other terrain or fixed object features. So, but to your point, I think what you're saying is there's enough room to provide some additional buffer beyond the bare minimum. Yeah. Because you're not going to take half the parking space, the whole stall, right? Was there something particular that you saw that raised some alarm bells, or just in general?
I do not recall, but I know there's some property issues. I know there's something going on around the Burger King, and I know there's some flow and connectivity issues between the jurisdictions and how that would work. So that is not me. I just remember that conversation. So I would just check in with the planning folks, because I think both localities have some challenges with basically that intersection, because it's already a little bit crazy. So I don't know what that looks like, so I would.
Yeah. So,
Jamie, Mike has seen all of the stuff around the crossing there. Has already seen that stuff.
Oh, you're talking about down to 3?
I don't know. I don't even know what's over.
The Burger King and stuff and the crossing,
Yeah.
he's seen all that.
Right, comment on that.
Yeah.
You're talking about this?
Then you're good to go.
Oh, yeah, they've been stakeholders throughout the whole pipeline.
Okay, then I'm good to go.
Okay.
Don't call anybody,
Okay.
don't send out any emails.
There is never a problem with giving them the latest version of the
Yeah, definitely.
slide. They can always give a comment if they want to.
Just don't put me on the email, I'm not gonna.
And Kathy, are you still there?
Yep, I
Kathy?
am.
Fantastic, got COVID.
Okay. Well, okay, just to confirm, so where we're talking about this existing and proposed cross-section up there between Fall Hill and Cowan, we're not talking about moving any curb, taking away any vehicular capacity. So we're talking about a shared use path, so widening the sidewalk essentially from 5 foot to a 10-foot shared use path.
And taking the perpendicular parking space.
Right.
Exactly.
Doing something similar on and pairing that concept up to the north.
Down.
All right, so let's keep going. Similarly, we're not moving curve, we'll just be adding, on this side. Shared use path.
I noticed it looked like on that one, there's a slight drop on the lane width. Is that was that intentional?
I don't think so, Cassie. I think that was is that a copy paste? Again, this was an earlier version, so I apologize.
So
Yeah,
are they
I
having
think
to
that-
change that? Sorry, Cassie.
Nope,
Go ahead.
yep, sorry, I don't think that was intentional. I think, the small area plan just cuts into the park, or the, surplus parking, but the lanes, I believe, stay the same. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so in other words, I think that was a typo.
Are they changing sides of the road?
Yes.
And they do it at, Cowan. The green line flips over to the,
So essentially, VHB is proposing to put the bike path on the other side of the road to which the city had initially proposed it. Am I reading that correctly?
Cassie, is that accurate?
Say that, sorry, can you say that one more time?
So we're switching, so on the north side of the corridor, our shifting path is on the east side of Carly.
Correct.
And then at times we shift them to the west side. And Ian's question was, does that contradict the city's small area plan?
No, I don't believe so. I think that there would be safer crossings at the Cowan Boulevard. We would improve ADA and bike accessibility and ped accessibility at that intersection. I think that flows better in with the fall line than having to cross over the on ramps and off ramps of Fall Hill at the north. There is to carry that further down. I think it's safer, a safety measure for that.
So that's our rationale for switching sides. Ian's question, though, is does the small area plan also recommend that?
I don't think they had any recommendations for the northern section. I'll have to look back at that, but it was mainly just the Cowan down to the Plank Road.
So VHB crossed them on the north end to bring them to the east side.
And there may be issues looking at, because I'm trying to remember all the shops, just south on the eastern side of where that block is, highlighting this expansion, there's a couple of businesses that butt up directly to the sidewalk.
Right.
And the road, so if we expanded, we would be as the whole plan, we'd be taking away access to the freeway. So I think there's like a 5-inch shop and a couple other things that.
Hallmark.
Right. Hallmark.
And that stormwater pond,
On the
yeah.
sidewalk side.
Yeah.
So if we were to do that, we would block those businesses.
So yeah, there's our recommendation for that for them to be on the east side. We agree with being on the west side for the rest of the alignment, and that also goes hand in hand with our proposal for pipeline to have the controlled pedestrian phase on the west side of the intersection. So that's where that was.
And I think the east side between Fall Hill and Cowan makes sense because that's where the Cracker Barrel and more of the eating, all the restaurants are there. The Super Walmart's on the south, so it makes a lot of sense for the cyclists to be able to eat and.
No, the Panera's on the west side.
But to Cassie's point, the connection at Fall Line makes sense to be east and then on the south side, as opposed to trying to cross some of those free flow, right turn.
No, I think that makes good sense.
Channelizing, so.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you guys are keeping the trees, the existing trees in this.
That too.
You know, it's hot in Central Park in the summertime, and having a little shade is pretty clutch and gonna encourage people to keep walking and biking, so great to see that.
All right. Probably jump to the next project. Okay. So finally is providing that connectivity here.
That's what people take notice.
Now in this case, we are looking at along Chatham Bridge, a road reconfiguration. We'll see that on the next slide. Here's the full alignment where we're trying to make those connections. On Kings Highway, you've got this 12-foot shoulder, and the thought is that it could be a roadway reconfiguration, make that So the next slide will show exactly what that is. A cycle track, so a buffer cycle track, facility there making use. Of course, now from a VDOT perspective, you're losing your shoulder, but it's not as if there's no room for an errant vehicle or a disabled vehicle. Well, of course, we don't want them, I'm not encouraging them to take our bike lanes, but, it's not like we're putting a curb and then they're constrained. So I think VDOT would be okay with that on their roads. It is VDOT, right? Not in the city.
Yes.
Okay. So now then on Chatham, we're talking about a traditional 4-to-3 roadway reconfiguration. So there's the existing. Of course, we go with a two-way left turn lane to still provide the turning vehicles to get out of the through lanes, and we'd have directional bike lanes on either side. We already have the sidewalk, so it's just better allocation of the pavement.
Just freeze at that point, just so that everybody gets this concept, because this is a change, and for those who are bike advocates, this is a sort of a revolutionary change, right? You're actually deciding, if you go with this, to take away a lane that is currently open to traffic and allocate that space to bicycles and pedestrians, right? Now, there's a rationale for that. I don't know if you want to talk to that, but there's a reason for doing that on this particular road. And if you understand, do you all know where we're talking about here? Yeah. The bottom left is the Chatham Bridge with that fancy new shared use path. You get across the bridge and there's nowhere to go except along the river. So this is saying, we don't want to stop there. We want to go somewhere because we're cyclists. We're not just weekend joyriders. We actually bike to school and work and places, so how do you get there? So the idea is to try to get you into the neighborhood, to the houses, to the shops, to the other things. So that first part he showed you, there's a nice buffer shoulder that we can use for the bike path, but now when you go up the hill towards Chatham Heights Road, how do you fit that in? And this proposal is quite different, because we're going to take away one lane of car traffic and allocate that space to bicycles and pedestrians, and do you want to explain why we're doing that? I can do it, or you can do it.
Well, in the sense that this is a good corridor for doing exactly that, because there's excess capacity, excess vehicular capacity.
That's the key point.
Yeah.
I didn't realize this. BHB went and studied the numbers, and actually this road does not carry heavy traffic. And therefore, you've got 4 lanes and not that many people riding up and down here. So taking away 1 lane and having 3 lanes instead of 4, kill the traffic.
The only congestion point would be the intersection at 218, because as you may have left, it immediately merges into a single lane, which causes, near misses. So how will this lane go all the way to 218, or would it fade out before the left turn intersection, broader map, like the at 218?
We didn't tell BHB what to do with the end of it up there, so I'm open to whatever they do.
You're talking about the very north end.
Yeah, because you make that 2 turn lanes, and then it immediately condenses down into a single lane going west.
Before you get to the water.
And it immediately turn off, so people shoot out and around. So it gets a little congested at that intersection, but nowhere else. And the congestion's only because of the road conditions once you turn to 18.
Right. Part of what we would do is a capacity analysis of the intersection itself. So the segment on the intersection here. Yep. The segment as a whole has about 8,000 vehicles per day. AADT is what we say, right? And then, so if you look at that in the peak hour, there's just not enough vehicles to warrant 2 lanes. But then at intersection, you might have different stores. Look at the peak hour and the operations of the signal itself. And there's a different figure for the peak hour. And typically for a signalized intersection, we say about 600 vehicles per hour per approach is in the range of that roadway reconfiguration, so down to 1 lane. But what we might do at intersections, we've done this in designs all over the place, is we might open it back up to the 2 lanes at the approach to the intersection, if that's what the capacity analysis dictates.
So I don't want to sound like a bike proponent, because, why would I want to do that? At the moment, you come across this fancy bridge, and then that's the end of it. You go along the river. Now, look, all the housing up here that you can access on your bike, if we do this, over here, there's a shopping center, there's a gym, there's local stores, there's a little strip mall, there are things to do up here. The dentist I went to is up there. So there's a whole lot of activity centers along here, and you can suddenly now cycle somewhere. So, as I've said to BHB and others, I'm not fixated about the details, right? If you guys think there's a better way of doing it, if BHB thinks there's a better way of doing it, I don't get fixated by the details. But we're opening up opportunities here to walk and to bike that are limited right now. But I don't know how the county feels about this particular solution, but I'm certainly supportive of developing a cycle path or multi-use path, shared use path in this vicinity, so that our fancy, really nice bridge that VDOT has built for us can go further, can take you somewhere.
I had a suggestion. Did you guys ever consider a configuration that created a protected bike or multi-use path? I know that you said a traditional road diet gives you those painted bike lanes, one directional on either side. Is it possible to have a situation where you actually have a curb protected, grade separated, multi-use path?
It's certainly possible, it's just cost. Yeah.
That was exactly my question, if it was protected with more than paint.
Yeah, so.
Bollards,
Yeah, so, and when bollards, not bollards, flex tubes.
Oh.
We don't want to think that they're a fixed object and create more hazard.
Flex tubes.
But the flex tubes that would help delineate, and hopefully, they're not going to keep a car from straying, but they help to provide that delineation. So that's what we use in urban environments all the time. I know this is not quite urban, but you know, for the speed limit and the volumes, that separation through the buffer markings and the flex tubes spaced every 15, 30 feet seems to do the trick. But and then there's something intermediate as opposed to providing a fully curved, elevated. You could keep it at the same elevation and then have intermittently spaced, raised curb. So that's good for drainage too, because then you're not.
It's rumble strips in that buffer area.
Rumble strips are good too.
Yeah, except the noise. You do have some residential. So.
No, but I mean, along your buffer area with the bollards, also have the rumble strips in Virginia Beach. They did it on Shore Drive, just an extra safety measure.
Yeah. Certainly something to be examined for residents. They get hit enough that it's normal.
Well, I was going to say one additional comment. We talk about the 15-minute city, the 15-minute neighborhood. Earl's Hardware is right up there on this route, and that would link me as a resident of the city of Fredericksburg, downtown Fredericksburg, with a hardware store, which is kind of cool because that's something that's often hard to get to, if you want to get a light bulb or something like that. So I appreciate that.
Alex Elsiak provides that there are probably too many entrances along Chatham Heights to have a protected bike lane. And then Kathy agreed there are a lot of access points.
I can see that.
Certainly poses a challenge, yeah.
Quick question. I know you're going to refer me to the website, but before you do, I'm going to ask a quick question. Statistically speaking, when you say that there's plenty of space to create bike paths and walking paths, right? So there's 6 metrics that are being available on either side, which will squeeze in the car lanes. So my question is, what are the statistics on our population density increases in Fredericksburg and in Stafford and the oncoming flow of traffic, commuting from Richmond to DC every day, and then just general driving traffic and your peak hours? What's the statistical analysis on our projections for the next 20, 50, maybe even 5, 10 years, or when we'll need to expand that road say it becomes, let's say, since we've had a 30% increase in the last year in Fredericksburg in population density, say there's another 30% increase, and now there's 60% more people than there were just 2-3 years ago. What would happen at that point, which is actually something that you brought up, Mr. Ollis, is that, you know, how do we plan for tomorrow what we're doing today? Or however that's supposed to be phrased. And so then the question I'm asking is, statistically, are we going to need to start looking at not just the Chase End Bridge, but also other areas in which we're implementing bike territory or bike terrain, rather? Are we going to need to expand it like we're doing with the I-95? Are we going to need to build out? And that's why I refer back to the parking lot. Because the parking lot, you know, now it's not a big deal. We've got plenty of space, and it's like, oh, we've got oodles of space, there's nothing to do there. But if an investor comes in and says, look, I want to park my territory here tomorrow, I'll pay you $500 million to do it, and can we zone it for, like, industrial use? And I want to connect it to Hospital Road and Courthouse Road, and I also want to develop this, that, and the other. If that happens, are we prepared now, today, for that happening in rapid hyper development phases? I think right now we're doing this in staunches. Tranches? What's the word? Staunches? Tranches. We're doing it in stages. But planning way ahead in the future, how are we evaluating what's going to be needed 20, 50, even 5, 10 years from now, today?
Right.
So I just wanted to ask the statistical evaluation on this 20 years from now, if there were to be that bottleneck that you mentioned, that happens, Mr.
Steve.
What was it again?
Steve.
Steven, the bottleneck. And so that's going to be a big impact point for cars and traffic and bicycles, and that's a very important topic. So I'd like to see, you know, or hear more about that, and if it'll need expansion, if we have land to expand to, or territory for bicyclists and stuff.
Yes, for a moment. Part of the issue is that we can't continually build for cars. We can't afford building it. We can't afford upkeeping the roads after we build it. We can't. So the more infrastructure we get like this, where bikes, where you can move a ton of people in a bike lane that you can't move in cars, is going to help with that very thing. Plus, we get the people out of the cars. We're no longer car-centric. So thinking about, oh, how will this affect car travel in 10, 15 years is the wrong kind of thinking.
Well, then I go to your study, right? Because you had a study about bicyclists. Yeah, what kind of bicycler are you? Are you someone who's going to be a standard bicycle?
Well, it's not just about designing for bicycles. We're also going to be changing our land use patterns to put people closer to where they need to go. We are no longer going to be expanding highways and roads. We're moving away from that. It's not something we're going to be thinking about in the future for various reasons, from public transportation, the way we're going to be doing our land use patterns, to air travel and air taxis, and to sharing vehicles and all sorts of other things. So it's just not something we're going to have to think about.
So we do have an answer to the question. BHP has got an answer, and FAMPO also has an answer, and so I have an answer. It's the same answer. And the answer is that we have a thing called the travel demand model.
That too, yes.
And they are modeling the results of that for the year 2050. We have modeled together with our previous consultants what it looks like to the year 2050, and the results of that we published in our long-range transportation plan, which is on the website.
Right.
So we can tell you the approximate, and it's only approximate because that's what models are. They try to guess the future. It's the approximate number of cars we think are going to be on all of these roads. And they can tell you, and I'm sure they will, that they've looked at this particular area.
And assessed it.
And they're currently running a new model to update it, to have a look at the entire region, because your question was about the entire region. And so they're running the model for the entire region, and we picked 13 roadway corridors, which the model says in the year 2050 are going to be congested, the worst ones. And they are looking at solutions to those problems, how to fix that congestion in the year 2050. And later on this year, they're going to present you with their proposed answers to the problem. So the model is an attempt answered that question, and it's already done, so we don't need to worry. It's not.
So then why?
If you look on the wall in my office, there's a map of what the outputs of that model are, and it'll tell you where the congestion is going to be,
So
and it's not on that blue line.
Okay, so it's not planned. So it's planned for already? This is planned for already?
The guy's full-time job is to run models and make predictions and draw lines where they think things are going to be terrible, and to tell us that.
So what are the statistics?
We can't give it to you for that specific piece of road right now.
Okay, never mind.
Off the top of our head, but we can bring you a map tomorrow if you
And
want.
then there is the Amazon variable, you know, who thought that two different facilities would come in with such large square footage plans?
Exactly. I mean, a rocket might have to take off from that green patch there, but there's some things we just can't predict.
Right.
There's some things within reason that are predictable and some things that are completely out of sight. And coming from Los Angeles, I can tell you that we have bike paths, we have transportation issues that are abundant in the sense that everybody says to themselves, why didn't we address this 50 years ago? And now we're having to backpedal looking at what we could have done.
LA's been building roads for 100 years.
Exactly.
They've never had worse traffic.
Exactly.
So I don't think building lanes is a good way to improve traffic congestion. I think that's 20%.
I think so too.
So I'm looking.
Everyone, I think in the interest of time,
We're a little off topic.
we are straying a little off topic.
Sorry, I always do that, but thinking outside the box.
Yes, we should let our presenter finish his presentation.
Yeah, that was a great answer, by the way, everybody, so I don't feel like I need to chime in on that one, but can you say that louder?
For the crossing, plan or proposed crossings from, connecting Chaplain Bridge, going along King Highway. Is a plan to cross, at Chaplain Road? Or earlier, because you can't turn left anymore along that river road. Are we looking at going across there? The northern crosswalks, I always thought it was weird. I haven't run this area in a while to see if they finally connected it. The sidewalks that come down Chaplain Road on the west side stop like 5 feet from the sidewalk on the north side of Kings Highway.
So VDOT's already built a crossing there.
Okay.
It's already done with the traffic lights.
Okay.
So I sneakily decided to encourage DHB to design a path that actually uses that crossing.
At the,
even if we need to slightly widen it because it's not wide, it's already built.
At the intersection.
At the signal.
at the left turn from Kings Highway to Chaplain.
You go up the right-hand side of King Highway to the traffic light, turn left, and there's already a crossing with concrete little lips on either side to stop cars getting on there. It's already there.
Yeah, and if you look at the crosswalk on the north, or the sidewalk on the north side of King Highway, stop. It's like a 5 to 6 foot. Trying to discourage people from even using it. Okay.
Yeah, the short and easy answer is that'll be part of our engineering process to figure out what is the safest crossing as well as the most efficient as far as vehicular traffic, and it will be.
They're like redirecting that pedestrian traffic down.
So I think the most important point that I've heard just now was that one from Alex.
About the driveways.
Which says that we need to think through how many driveways we're crossing. I don't know whether that affects whether we put this thing on the east or the west side of the road, or whether there's any ameliorating things we can do. That's, I think, probably the biggest challenge.
And we've had some preliminary discussion about that too, whether or not it's a cycle track along Chatham, or what we were showing was the directional lanes. And the driveway spacing may influence that decision.
Yeah, I think that's an important comment from Stafford and the chair. I don't know if you have other ones, but that's certainly one I think we need to be aware of.
Yeah, I think it's a good option to explore. Wherever there's a road with excess capacity, then it should be on the table. You know, I think my preference would probably be, and this one's for Alex, but coming down Naomi and up Cool Spring, because Cool Spring has bike lanes already, but
Such that they are.
Yeah. But I think this is a good option too.
So that's something VHB can look at and tell us whether that's better or
Naomi and
not.
Cool Spring? as an alternative to Chatham?
I have no idea which roads those are, just for the record, so I'm just.
Well,
Excellent.
so Naomi was sort of on the table for the last phase of Belmont Ferry Farm Trail that went away, so I would ask Alex if he has any additional input on that.
Why not?
Can you chat with him?
Listen.
Okay.
So that's all I had on this.
Okay, good.
Good point. We'll look into that.
Any other comments, or can we move on?
Let's move on.
That's the end of the presentation. That's our fourth project.
Okay.
Any parting thoughts, questions, comments, things for us to run down as we wrap this up?
I think if Kathy could just give us whatever the latest version is, we can send a copy to everyone tomorrow.
And it's not substantially different, it's tweaks here and there.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that.
You do more by my house?
Right? Yeah, come out to way out yonder in South Minnetonka and put one by my house. Very exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks. And thanks for coming down from Russia.
Sorry, Kathy couldn't make it.
She recovers soon.
Yeah.
All right, FAMPO Vision Survey results.
Are you good there?
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to rehash some of what Ian said earlier. He was talking about a vision statement, and you all received the vision survey from us. Thank you so much for filling it out. Those of you who took the time to give us your feedback on what you think the future vision of FAMPO should be. So let's go on. We sent out 97 surveys to 91 committee members and their alternates, so you all, and the 6 FAMPO staff members. 63 surveys were completed, and you took the survey, you know what was on it. But I'm just kidding. We're going to go through that right now. So these are the results, and what I did was, I'm the only one who knows, like, who filled out what survey, but I didn't, like, go through and say, oh, what does this person do? I don't even, you know, I'm not great with names, like, you know, some other people we know. And so what I did was I took common phrases that were mentioned in everyone's comments, and if, you know, it was more than mentioned 5 times in the 63 responses that we got, I would include it to make, you know, a measurable graphic for you. So the first question was, why does FAMPO exist? And you gave us your opinions on why FAMPO exists. And the biggest response that we got back was for more regional collaboration. So that's exciting. Also, transportation planning, also a good one for us to exist about. Then, you know, some information dissemination, sort of like what just happened with BHC, the studies, and then citizen representation from all of you. Thank you so much. Those of you who are just like at-large members or don't have to be here. And then, you know, funding projects, government requirements, lifestyle improvements. Again, this is all just your feedback about why FAMPO exists for rural localities, multimodal transportation, and then we'll get into some of the other questions. We did this, the same sort of measurement. So the second question was, if the FAMPO vision is realized, how would the region look different in the future? So you all suggested multimodal for, like, this was in more than 35 people's responses, so that's awesome. Transit-oriented development, sustainable and more equity, more density and walkability, fewer vehicles, economic growth. We definitely know that you all really took the survey. I'm just kidding. You know, you know, all these awesome bike and ped improvements, work-life balance, citizen participation, more funding. Then the most important solution that FAMPO should be working on right now, of course we have transportation, but we also have FAMPO, but developers, the region, for more transit, for traffic, congestion, development, freight, infrastructure, multimodal, you know, so great things in all of your responses there. And then the second most important solution that FAMPO should be working on, I just took some key phrases from everybody's responses, so this isn't ranked at all, it's just the more phrases that popped out in all of your responses. So accessibility for all, bike and ped improvement, citizen engagement, transit-oriented development again, rural connections, a regional transportation authority, all amazing things, you know, mobility options. And you'll get this presentation sent out to you, so you'll be able to really dissect it if you want to. And then the next question was, if we can't build our way out of the congestion crisis, what are we going to do? We have shift freight to rail, increase VRE capacity, multimodal options, teleworking, congestion pricing, density, walkability, traffic calming, open easy pass lanes, light rail, incentives to use public transit. And a big one that Ian touched on earlier, when gas taxes no longer cover transportation costs, where should the state and the region find funding? So this was another one that I ranked of common choices that you all, or common phrases that you all mentioned in your comments. So vehicle miles traveled, or tax the weight of the vehicle, a different sales tax altogether, stop funding unnecessary projects. Yeah, this is a little objective, but you know, this was all your opinion. So incentivize public transit, tax developers, tax electric cars, tax areas that aren't walkable. Again, none of you all filled out the survey, did you? Okay. And we have just a couple more. So how do we integrate land use with transportation infrastructure, transit-oriented development, eliminate parking minimums, rezone and mixed use, standardized uniform property fees, connect FAMPO jurisdiction planning, more communication. And these are just a couple of your direct quotes. So just to sprinkle in some of your actual words, loosen density and zoning regulations, pedestrian-only areas, build the land use around the travel pattern, make developers, including corporations, more liable for proffers that are restricted from being added to the price of products and services developed. These aren't just like yours, you know, picked out, but they're everybody's, so all 63 people. And then this is, the last two questions are ones that you all actually ranked in the survey. So what were your first choices and last choices for these categories? So accessibility.
What was the question? Just read the question.
Oh, sorry. Which of the following is most important for transportation planning? So the biggest first choice chosen was multimodal transportation options. We have transportation safety, congestion mitigation, transportation for all, accessibility, and addressing environmental concerns.
We're not big on environmental concerns here.
Yeah.
We're a lot bigger on multimodal and congestion.
But, you know, hopefully, you know, like improving some of these other things will address environmental concerns. So, you know, but that's for transportation planning, right?
But just for your benefit, if you're watching this, this is not the public.
Yeah.
The survey only went to FAMPO committee members and alternates of our 4 committees. So this is supposed to be the insider's take, not the public's take.
And what would our committee members and staff, FAMPO staff, what would we like to see more of in 50 years? Again, you ranked these, so all 63 responders, you know, first choice, lifestyle improvements, but the biggest first choice was transit-oriented development. And then there's a tie for first choice was safer cycling paths and affordable transportation. But I do want to mention that the safer roads and sidewalks was not chosen last by anyone. So that's big. I appreciate that. that there was that metric. So that's it for the survey questions. Do y'all have any, questions?
Can you roll back to that slide?
Yeah.
The very bottom one, accommodations for people living with disabilities, that's kind of bad.
Sorry.
How many people chose it as their last choice?
Oh, yeah.
And remember though that it's a ranked choice, so it's relative to the other ones. It's not, do you care about accommodations for people with disabilities? Everybody would probably say yes. But when you have to choose between that and congestion and transit-oriented developments and safer bike paths, you chose the other options.
And there are federal and state agencies that are looking out for the environment and for the disabled, so there are those.
There's requirements.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That could explain that.
And, transit-oriented development, the biggest first choice would definitely help for accommodations.
The first choices in these last two actually surprised me in a positive way. I actually did not think that we would see multimodal options and transit-oriented development score that highly. I expected congestion to be a big deal, right? But congestion wasn't really in the number one position in these two ranked choices of members, committee members and staff. That surprised me.
Even still, though, a lot of people, sorry.
Go ahead.
Even still, though, a lot of people chose reduced congestion last, so.
It's like a reverse bell curve.
Yeah, it's mostly the way, this is just analytical and world travel experience. If multimodal and development planning is the priority, I encourage anybody to go to Singapore and use their public transportation system. It's the best I've seen in the world. Because, it's easy when it's an island and it has a ring highway, but the taxi and bus systems are based around a city center or a village center. The train station, the monorail goes around. So they developed the community transportation, or they did the housing development around the transportation model. So if I take the train to work and I come home, my bus, my taxi, my shopping center, my living area, my park are all congregated around that. And I just need to worry about a transportation method to get outside of my community. So if you do that multimodal and development planning and plan a community and force developers to think like that, that takes big policy way above us. It sort of corrects that idling, so the congestion and everything else is automatically reduced because you don't have to rely on a car. If I need to go to downtown Singapore, the city of Singapore within the country state of Singapore, I just take my bus or my cab to the train station, get on the monorail, take the monorail into the downtown area, and then I take the monorail home, and I can bicycle or anything like that. So
it's a great model, but anybody hazard a guess as to why we don't have that model in the U.S.?
Because we have deep pockets that are walking against it?
No, I don't think that's a major reason.
And lane ownership, rights and stuff.
Yeah, it works when you can go top down, right? The government owns most of the land, most of the real estate, most of everything, and you rent what you have from the government, and they can chuck you out. And so when we have democracy, God forbid, we should have democracy and free choice, it just becomes a little harder because I can't bulldoze your damn house when I want to put a highway through it, or a train, or a bus. I have to ask your permission, or what's the word for expropriation in the U.S.?
Eminent domain.
Condemn. Eminent domain your house away. In Singapore, you don't have to, and in certain parts of China, you don't have to. You just say, buddy, move, I'm taking it. And so that's what helps. But the point is that planning actually produces better outcomes. So people like Chris and his firm and us as FAMPO planners, our job is to try and encourage that, but we have to do it in a democratic system where we have to cajole you all and the public and everybody else and the decision makers in Congress to move in the direction that is good planning practice. We unfortunately can't do what they do there because we don't have the power. Well, I'm a Democrat, I just have to say, in the generic sense, not in the political.
Yeah, the distribution on reduced congestion is fascinating. It was either you really want it or you really don't care about it.
It was my last choice.
I think it was probably mine.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Cody. Kristen, I feel like you have to say to the end, now you gotta drop more afterwards.
All right.
All right, on to smart scale update, Ms. Barber.
So I have a stress fracture in my foot, so if you don't mind, I'm going to sit here and, you guys have seen these several times, so I'm going to sort of go through it quickly and only elaborate on the ones that have changes. We are down to the final 8. We are working hard to get these submissions in by the August 1st deadline. As you know, we have 2 organizations here. Each organization can submit 4, so I am working on all 8 of them. GWRC has the US 1 Lay Hill intersection for Stafford, and the US 1 Route 628 turn lane improvements, and the Dixon Street roadway and multimodal improvement, Lafayette Boulevard multimodal improvements. And on the FAMPO side, we have the VCR regional project, which was featured in Ian's presentation, the I-95 8-lane widening and commuter bus project, the US 1 multimodal and roadway improvements at Massaponax Church Road and Guinea Station Road, and the US 1 bicycle and pedestrian improvements. Next slide. So I'm only going to talk about these if there has been a change in the scope. This one has a shared use path and a bus stop. Next slide. This one is turn lanes. Next slide. This one has sidewalk, shared use path, and lane widening, as well as new lanes. Next slide.
Lane there for people who like lanes.
Yeah, I'm really just trying to go fast. Lafayette Boulevard is several sections of sidewalk to complete gaps, new bus stop, and turn lane improvements. Next slide. You heard about the VCR regional project, several pieces of shared use path. Next slide. I-95 widening to 8 lanes and 3 commuter buses going to the DC area. Next slide. This one is pieces of shared use path, a new roundabout at Guinea Station Road, and intersection improvements at Massaponax Church Road. Next slide. This one has changed. It's going to be on the west side of US 1 from Kings Mill Drive, where the current VCR trail is, all the way down to Harrison Road. This one's very ambitious. But we are trying to keep the cost down by using the service roads wherever we can. Currently, where all of those dealerships are parking cars, we're going to try to grab that back and make those shared roadway areas wherever we can and use shared, what's that?
They're using public land.
Yeah, it's not their land. They shouldn't be using it.
On your land.
So we're going to do shared use paths where we need to, use those parking areas, which are actually public land, where we can. And then there's an area in front of the big cemetery that is a very low traffic road that we're also going to use. And then at the end, right up near Kings Mill Drive, we have to figure out how to get there. And that may either be a bike ped bridge, or then we might instead.
It's going to be the bridge.
You think it's going to be the bridge?
It's my project. Yeah.
Well,
no, I say that meaning.
Let me ask the question more precisely. I guess you priced them both out, and the bridge is the better.
We had a very good call yesterday with several VDOT discipline leads, and consensus was that that's going to be the cheaper, better alternative. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, then you heard it.
A bridge over what?
And bridge is sort of a.
The river Kwai.
There's a ravine or a depressed area right there at the intersection.
Yeah.
The thought was if we went around it, that might be cheaper, but the right-of-way costs would be higher than what we're calling a bridge. Is not really a bridge. It's a very short span.
A boardwalk.
Yeah. So.
Is it?
Yeah, because of the changing grade.
Got it.
Yeah, I was trying not to notice the fact that the person who's actually designing all this is sitting here while I talk about it. But I'm super excited about this project. It's really going to provide a lot of great bang for the buck.
I'm not sure I'm right, but this is one of the largest numbers of projects I've seen through FAMPO where almost every project has got a shared use part on it. I don't think I've seen that many in a row. So literally every one is something, and a shared use part.
Yeah.
So
Doing something right.
Turn lane was the one exception, I think, which is also one of mine. But that's a big safety improvement.
Yeah.
The vehicular limits there.
Linda,
To help fund that.
do they get in any trouble
Can
when
we
they
charge
pull the
rent
bike ped
to the
out
car
later
dealership?
on due to funding?
They're using small scale applications, so either the.
So go ahead, next, advance the next.
Have to restore it, and they could possibly.
If they fail to fund it, then we'll have to start.
Because as they say, because some people were trying to game the system.
So we're in crunch time. We only have till July 28th.
Where it got pulled out.
To finish all this and get it all in. Fosse and Fredericksburg are done with their economic development data. What that is everything within a certain buffer zone, all the new site plans have to be turned in and uploaded into the portal, so I have to get all of Stafford's put in now. So I've been like bugging Alex on that, and he's working to get that for me really hard. We're getting everything put in, and your fingers, we get this stuff funded and built.
Was there like, didn't they have to eliminate one of the options?
They did.
I mean, what was eliminated?
They eliminated the Warrenton sidewalk. Stafford voted to withdraw that one.
Okay.
And on the other list, on the FAMPO list, Spotsylvania basically withdrew the Route 3 one, I think partly because there's some big projects on that corridor, and it seemed, I think, a bit silly to lay down a bit of sidewalk as a project when you're going to need to do some big bang projects there. We need to first work out, are we going to build a big concrete flyover? Are we going to dig a tunnel? Whatever. Some of those things that Chris was sharing earlier from the study, that they were also doing, they're big, and we need to. It's no good to start to fiddle with the small things when you're going to come in the middle of that and build a big thing. Rather build the big thing first, and then you can fiddle around with where to put the sidewalk afterwards.
Yeah, we may be going after some big stuff in round 6.
Yeah, so
that area.
we in the future, there's some bigger things coming which we're going to need to fund.
And that's it for that update.
All right, thank you. And now we have our added agenda item, and that is to discuss the FAMPO Policy Committee representation. So I wanted to just open up the floor if any of you had any thoughts on what approach we should take on that, if it should be individual selected by the committee or should default to the chair. That's a couple options.
Would they be a voting member?
No, they're a non-voting member.
And what would the goal, so to match the requirement, what is our goal for that member's participation?
So the policy committee has already agreed in principle to have this. So they're going to amend the bylaws of the policy committee to allow you to send a representative to the policy committee with no voting powers, which is the same as we have for the CTAC right now. So it mirrors what the CTAC is doing. You won't have any voting powers, but you will have the right to speak at the policy committee on any items which your committee feels strongly about. So if you decide that you're really unhappy about something in the long-range plan, or it's putting too much money on X and we should put money on Y, and you want to tell the policy committee that, your representative would go to the policy committee and be afforded speaking time to present your case, or to bring a letter, or to represent your views at the policy committee. So even though you can't vote, you can at least say to the politicians and the elected people, hey, we don't like this one thing, or we do like this one thing, and we'd like to support you. Can you do more of this, or whatever it is you want to do?
So based on the responsibilities being delegated to that individual by the committee, I would see it needs to be a voted committee member, if not like chair, because you are ultimately delegating your voice and authority to that individual, and so it has to be somebody that you can also hold repercussions.
So that's a member, a fully appointed member of the committee. Correct. That's the minimum. You can't have a member of the public that is not appointed to the committee, and some of the public are appointed to the committee, so that's fine. So that's the minimum. Minimum is you you must be a committee member, and then you will represent the committee at the policy committee, and as Harry said, it could be, or use that, it could be the chair or the vice chair or a committee member, that doesn't matter. My only suggestion is you rotate that once a year, because you don't want John this month and Sally next month and Philip the following month, and like it becomes a little bit of a circus. So I would suggest once a year you elect your chairman and your vice chairman and whatever else. So you either decide it's the chairman or the vice chairman, or you once a year elect a person at your annual meeting so that we know who the person is.
And the meetings are twice a month, correct?
No, they're once a month.
They are once a month? Okay.
Yeah, and if you think, like, not to put something on you, but if you think it should be the chair because that person, you know that person is a member in good standing and already knows what's on the agenda, what the committee's about, you know, rather than maybe somebody who just shows up twice a year or whatever, you know what I mean?
And the point is that they're representing your views.
Yeah.
Not a chance for them to go to the policy committee and say, hey, I feel like talking about ice cream.
Right.
That's not, you're not electing somebody.
Yeah, you need to be able to trust that they represent.
They represent your views, so you would want to send somebody who's been on the committee for longer than 6 months to understand what your views are and who can represent you, and you feel confident, oh, they know what we're about, they'll go and tell them to build more cycle lanes or whatever. Okay, that's the goal.
What's the regular meeting time for the policy committee?
It's currently a Monday night, once a month. And it's usually the third, is it?
It's the third Monday of the month, and on nights that it is not on the same night as GWRC, it's at 6. But on nights that it comes after the GWRC meeting, it's at 7:30.
It only comes after GWRC if there's a holiday and it has to be moved to the fourth Monday.
So the chairperson of the vice head could always represent this group without being on the committee. They could talk about what this group approves or disapproves of, or their opinions. So what is the advantage of having them as a like full-fledged non-voting member?
So the point is that if you, right now, as things stand today, if the chairman goes to the policy committee now, the chairman would only be able to speak during the public comments.
Okay.
Whereas if the chairman is a non-voting member of the policy committee, they can speak.
So they'll be part of the conversation. Member reports.
Yes, if you're not an official member, you can only speak when you're allowed to.
Gotcha.
In that public comment period, which is what you have now. So what they've agreed to is you can send someone who can actually participate and make comments based on the views of your committee, not based on what they had for breakfast that morning, but based on what people think.
Right, so you have to plan in advance, right?
We ask the committee, is there anything that you want us to raise at the policy committee, and you actually discuss it, and just leave it to someone to invent things.
Topical.
And I think that the person could also appoint an alternate for when they couldn't make it. That would also be wise.
I did have a question. Would we need to amend our bylaws to?
Yes, but that would be easy because your bylaws don't have any complicated process. Like, they don't require a complicated process to amend. You just all vote to amend them.
Okay.
So
we can fix that next time.
So we would have that drafted and vote on that at the
I could do that.
next meeting?
I could just draft the new bylaws and you could all vote to approve
So
it.
the policy committee requested Harry to draft the amendments to the policy committee bylaws in order to give a non-voting seat on the policy committee, and they will do that. It will then be up to you to decide whether it's going to be one of your office bearers or one of your members, and that's your decision tonight, is to decide how you want to deal with that, because you'll need to appoint somebody to take up that position. And you can change it to your next AGM. I mean,
Well, that would be hard for them to do because I have to write into the policy committee's bylaws who it is, whether it's the chair or a member appointed by the committee.
Okay, so here's my take on it. A couple years ago, obviously Craig was our chair. At some point, I might be, but we come from non-FAMPO counties. So what kind of, obviously, like, when it comes to policy committee, my rep doesn't vote. Like, I think I'm the only one of our FAMPO members that, for certainly, that us as the rural counties, this is the only committee I think we have voted. And so, how much standing do I have with the policy committee when they go, oh, that guy's from King George?
BPAC has voting members.
Is the policy committee going to even,
Are they gonna wanna listen
are
to
they
me?
going to even acknowledge or care what you come from? You're the BPAC
Yeah,
rep.
and that's what I'm not sure, and that's why that's kind of my question though,
Doesn't
like.
matter where you come from, you're the BPAC rep. You know what I mean? You're representing BPAC,
That's my
not Caroline.
Yeah, that's my question though, is, you know, do Craig and I have that same, you know, or does Jacob and Brian have better standing because they're from their jurisdictions? Or
They shouldn't.
Somebody from, what are the other,
I mean, human beings are human beings and imperfect, but it should not matter.
yeah, so that's just my, you know.
Should be representing BPAC, not Caroline.
Yeah, well,
So-
King George.
I'm sorry.
She loves to be Caroline.
You said,
Well, cause Craig,
you said Craig, and I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'll be a cheerleader for bike infrastructure.
I know where you come from.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that. We email all the time. I know where you come from. My brain alliterates.
That's just my, you know, that's just my concern of, would we as BPAC not have as strong of a voice if that happened, if we just said it was the chair and the chair went that way?
Your voice will be as strong as you speak it.
Okay,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think part of that too goes back to where Ian was talking about, you know, the collaboration has improved in the time that he's been here, and he's seen really good collaboration when there's stories that I've heard of previous years when collaboration was not as good amongst the FAMPO 3.
Thank you again, Chris.
Thank you. So I had a,
Yeah, I mean, if you go and you talk about, we tell you, go talk about Stafford needs this here,
Yeah.
they're not gonna see you as someone
That's
from
right.
a rural
I
county.
just want to make sure that we're on, you know, like we were talking about smart scale, that those are the projects that we believe are the big ones, like the turn lanes, we didn't like because they didn't have a bike ped component.
And I would put that in your bylaw amendment for your committee, that ex individual or there will represent the views of this committee at the policy committee. So you wording like that in your bylaw amendment.
Yeah.
Because that then gives guidance to the person that's gonna go there as to what their job is.
Yeah.
Right?
I was just gonna say, I have no issues with it being the chair. That's probably a good idea, but if we wanted to bake in some flexibility, we could always have an internal practice that we're going to nominate the chair as the representative and have the policy committee bylaws just state that it's going to be an appointed individual. So if in any case we have a situation where maybe it doesn't make sense to select the chair, or they have a conflict on those days or something like that, it always gives us that option as well.
So how about the policy committee's bylaws say somebody that BPAC appoints, and BPAC bylaws say the chair?
Or the vice chair, or an alternative.
Yeah, the chair, the vice chair, or somebody that they appoint.
Yeah, I think, probably be good to keep them both flexible if that's the end goal, but, you know, we can
The
always
chair,
have an
both of
agreement
them could
amongst
say that,
ourselves
chair, the vice chair, or someone they appoint. Both of them could say that.
I strongly suggest having an alternate.
Yeah, that too. I did say that to him already.
Yeah, because there's 11.
All right. All right.
Does that work for everyone?
Does it work for you?
Yeah, does it work for you? Because it will most immediately affect you.
Usually ends up being.
Because you're not a voting,
2 months off.
I mean, it's not like you have to attend every single meeting or there's some penalty.
July.
You're not a voting member, but it's nice to have this facility so that twice a year, when you're really worked up about an issue, you kind of have the right to go take 5 minutes and talk to the policy committee about this issue you're worked up about. And then for 3 months, you've got nothing to say, and then you don't necessarily have to go make a fuss. You can skip the meeting.
That's true.
There's nothing on the agenda that affects bike pedestrians. It's not like you're forced to go every time. And if you build in an alternate, so that I'll go this month, you go next month, the next month nobody will go. And then, you know, so you can handle it like that. It's not like you have to be there every month. It's only if there are bike and pedestrian things that you care about that you need to raise, or that are on the policy committee's agenda, so that you feel like you should be there to say something. That's the kind of it.
Yeah, it just gives you a voice.
The BPAC chair, over the last 5 years, always attended the policy committee. It all depended on whether there was something.
Sorry, I said Caroline. My brain just goes, C, Chris, Caroline, Craig.
I don't mind.
Okay.
I mean, we talk about converged stuff.
Done? Do we need to vote on this, or?
Yes, you need to vote on what I just said. So I guess what I'll say what the motion will be, and then you can call for the motion.
Okay.
So the proposed motion would be that the BPAC and Policy Committee bylaws would be written to say that the representative would be the chair, the vice chair, or someone that they appoint.
Okay.
Does that sound right?
I'm saying someone that the chair appoints or someone that the committee appoints?
Oh.
Committee, I don't know.
The committee?
I think, for simplicity, I think if we just say someone, the committee reappoints, and we either,
Well,
and we just,
because I was implying that in that order.
yeah.
Oh, so hierarchy.
The preference would be the chair, but if the chair has a commitment, can't do it for whatever reason,
Okay.
then it would be the vice chair. If that doesn't work, it would be somebody the committee appoints.
Committee.
You just said the committee appoints.
Yeah.
Not the chair.
Yeah, well, that's what, you said committee a minute ago.
So now think about this practically, sorry to be, I don't have a vote on this, but I'll just give you some peace of my mind that you probably don't need. It's Friday afternoon, 4 o'clock, and on Monday, there's a policy committee meeting. Your wife's delivering a baby, you can't be there. The vice chair, broke his leg and he can't be there. You're gonna call a meeting to pick a third person?
No, yeah, that's right, we also have to make an alternate.
So I'm saying you wanna have this all set up once a year, so that you can appoint someone.
Well, okay, so that was the first sentence. The next sentence was, there should be an alternate that the committee appoints. There should also be, what?
The term is a supernumerary, a person that is on standby, that you're always on call in case that incident happens. The supernumerary is the individual that has to know everything he knows, but you are just there for a class.
It's like an understudy.
Yeah.
So you either elect an alternate once a year at your meeting, or you give the chairman the power to nominate an existing full committee member to be the standby. Be done.
I think I favor the latter.
Or
Yeah.
gives the chairman the authority to appoint somebody on the fly.
Okay.
Okay.
I will just write whatever you guys want. Tell me what to write.
So it will be the chairman, vice chairman, or the appointee of the chairman.
So
Okay.
chairman, and then vice chair is alternate, and then you also have the ability to.
That language, yeah.
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 Oh, no, never mind.
I think you guys said something different from each other.
No, I think
No,
not.
Okay.
the same thing.
So the chair, and then the vice chair is the alternate? Is that what she said?
That's what it was shaking out to be.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they're not both appointed to it, right?
Yeah.
And then that other person is just there in case,
You say or.
The chair has the authority to appoint someone
So we don't.
as needed.
To appoint another committee member
As,
in their absence, yeah.
It's easier to or a person nominated by the chairman.
okay.
Done.
done.
Or selected by.
It might just be that way harder.
Throw some like whereas in there.
Right, oh yeah, they are bylaws after all.
Uh-huh.
Just trying to write myself.
Rather than the chair appointing the alternate, it could just be, the chair selects.
Well, the chair isn't appointing the alternate, the chair is appointing the chair's
The emergency.
representative if the chair can't do it.
Yeah.
Is word that you use.
Now, is the chair appointing a person to just do it all the time, or in case they can't do it?
I think in case they can do it.
Okay.
So he's always got the vice chair available, and if they're both sick, then he says, I'm sending.
And the alternate both can't do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Go ahead and call for a motion.
All right, I'll take any motion for what Carrie just said.
Motion, what Carrie said.
All in favor? Aye.
You have such authority.
Opposed?
I know, right?
I assume we still have a quorum.
I think they can probably carry you out of here with your fracture. Should be the next,
I'm sad that we're not, are we still recording? Because I totally want to do minutes on motion for what Carrie said.
Meg.
Get that to your kids and put it on the fridge.
All right, on to correspondence.
So this correspondence is just to let you all know that there will be a public meeting, and this is very tiny. July 14th, Thursday, July 14th, on the proposed Twin Lakes Drive Kensington Bicycle and Pedestrian Connector. So be aware of that. There you go.
Where exactly?
Dorothy Hart Community Center on Canal Street.
Kensington. Okay.
So it's a canal, or it's a multi-use trail that goes along Lafayette.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
The new Fredericksburg Park Telegraph Hill development to Twin Lakes Drive on the west side of Lafayette.
Okay.
It's about a quarter mile. It's a short little segment.
Yeah.
But they're holding a hearing.
All right.
Is that where the traffic
It's
circle is
smart scale
on
funded.
Lafayette?
It's really just a design public hearing, and so people can look at what they put together. And they are banking on a little bit of local resistance from the Kensington Place residents who are a little bit protective of their landscaping in the front of their development, I think.
If we were in Singapore, we could solve their problem.
But the right of way is held by the city, so it's just a matter of trying to massage their concerns, I think.
So if people show up and support.
Were you the one who said?
Yes, right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, show up.
So I think I'll be letting some of my friends know that meeting's happening, just so there's a showing of people who would benefit from this, because, you don't want to concentrate hearing on the handful of people that are most likely to oppose it. You want to get people on either side who are going to be linked by this trail to come out and tell the story of why it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. It's a nice little connector.
It's very important.
Fills an important gap.
Yeah. Lafayette is so underserved by pedestrian infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Seriously it is.
All right.
So, there you go.
Thank you. Staff reports?
Staff reports. I have a wee staff report. Actually, I don't have a staff report. I have member reports during the member report section. Oh, yeah. That's Ian's job, though.
There we go.
We are interviewing for new staff. Member reports.
Was that it for member reports?
That was staff reports. Got any staff reports, Colleen?
No.
Okay.
Great job, all of you.
So do you not have any member reports?
Pipeline smart scale is turning into a broken record. I saw that our job ad was live again, and they put out 2 of them, one for a senior planning specialist, one for a regular planning specialist. It's one job. It's just we're trying to get somebody breathing brain. Hint, hint to the staff here, we're gonna try to steal some.
Just tell any of my staff,
You will take out things to Marcy about that.
Ian's gonna throw something at you. It's
To be honest, because I actually looked at the ad and I think you would be excellent for it.
Yep, so I don't have a lot to report that's brand spanking new. Thank you.
Okay. Only thing I had was some updates from our transportation division. So recently they wrapped up a multimodal study on Warrenton Road, and now they're going to shift their focus to Garrisonville. So they're working on scoping that with the consultant. They're looking at basically Garrisonville between Route 1 all the way out to Joshua Road. So look to start on that this fall, and I think aim to complete sometime mid-next year.
Great.
Been any news on the Butler Road study?
I haven't heard anything recently. I've checked with Alex. Anything?
I think that avenues that Jamie kind of let slip there, we should ask the city reps to follow up on. Sounds like there's some proposal that the staff of the city are working on to build in these bike and pedestrian links around the Fred Transit Center, and none of us have seen a picture yet, so you might want to ask them for a picture for your next meeting to see what it is.
She said she was gonna email you something, so make sure you pass it
I
along.
hope so. If I get it, I'll certainly pass it along.
Okay. For you?
For me, I may be relocating to Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, you know, I don't know if this will be my last meeting per se, but, as long as I'm here, I will be dedicating my efforts and interests to helping FAMPO and BPAC.
Right.
Yeah, and I will say there's a lot of information that I can leverage to bring over here from the 20-year projections and the planning committee meetings and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to making a presentation maybe in the future before I leave by September if I'm still here. If not, I'd like to introduce a gentleman named Dan Burden, and I'll connect you with him. Blue Zones, exactly. Dan Burden from Blue Zones. He's critically acclaimed Lifetime Award winner, smart design guy, and you know, I think he's got some great ideas. Don't take all of them, but take them into account. So I think, you know, introducing him to have a conversation here through BPAC and FAMPO, and Ian, who just left, would be a sound idea. I'm also reaching out to other consultants that focus on smart cities, smart design cities, so we can be efficient, economical, reduce our carbon emissions, and he said the gas tax is a big deal, so reducing our carbon footprint is really important as we cut down and deforest a lot of the trees around here in Stafford and Fredericksburg. You know, looking at walkability, part of that is nature preservation. And so I'm reaching out to some consultants who have great ideas, who have had success with smart cities. And I think they can not only help attract the right kind of funding and investment opportunities here in Stafford and Fredericksburg, but also help plan out exactly what this county region is going to look like in 50 years from now, based on actual proven results from other similar counties who've gone through rapid expansion like this one. So, or regions that have gone through rapid expansion. So I'm really excited about that. I'm doing a little business development for FAMPO and for BPAC so that you guys have ample resources from people from all over the U.S., hopefully, who can come on and just speak maybe, or just, you know, be aware, tuned into Stafford and FAMPO. So they can, and you know Blue Zones, right? You've heard of it. Dan Burden has been on like 3 BPAC committees. And you know, just not being afraid to reach out for the right type of help is really important. And my greatest hope for this region is that you guys have the type of help you really desire. You know, not just what you get, not just what you want, but what's necessary. So, yeah, I guess I said a mouthful. Sorry. A little passionate.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Passion is good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really do care about everyone. And little bunnies on our front lawns. So I digress, I withdraw.
Any updates?
Now, the one thing I was gonna bring up due to the time, the perfect meeting.
All right. Adam, anything to report?
Yeah, so Terry was kind enough to send ahead some information about a urban heat island study that Friends of the Rappahannock is conducting. I'm looking for volunteers for this Sunday, between 2 and 5 p.m. So if anyone knows of anyone or here wants to volunteer for that study, just have them email me and I can send them information. There's also another study going on Tuesday for UMW is doing a heat island study, and our studies are conjoined to make sure we complement each other. So happy to more information if you need that.
And do you have a radius of your target?
It's within the GWRC, the 5 municipalities. We're actually working with GWRC on this study. We're under contract, basically.
So, little off topic, but GW Ride Connect is planning on having a meeting with the van poolers to discuss, how van pools can, address the flexible schedules that people are having. So you don't have full-time van pool riders anymore, but how do you deal with the flexible and, only having 1 day a week or 2 days a week, 3 days a week, et cetera. If you guys know anyone who would be good to speak on that topic, let me know.
Well, look here, state of Virginia has eliminated all telecommute agreements.
I know.
So we're back full-time this week. It's a long week. I love my job, but it's a long week.
There's a lot going that way, and it's just, it's all up in the air on how long.
But I don't know if private employers are following suit or not. I don't know.
It depends on the individual employer, on whether they want to do that or not. And then, of course, there's kickback from the employees because they don't want to do that. And our air is better if they don't go in 5 days a week, and everyone's happier if they don't. So it's a mess. But if you know anybody who would like to speak to the van pools on that subject, let me know. Thank you.
And King George Parks and Recreation did a needs assessment in the month of May, and of the 30 different types of recreation facilities I asked about, walking and biking trails finished first as the top need, which is good because now we're going into our capital improvement plan. The administration moved our implementation of our way study to me, to Parks and Rec, so now I get to advocate for it, which is good. And while we're not asking for any funding for it this year, because we put it in the rural work plan to work with Carrie
we're working on it.
on actually ranking those, coming up with a way to rank those projects, so that then we can prioritize what funding do we go after. So a lot of good stuff's going to happen in the next few months as we work through that. But yeah, don't call me till July is over, because I am going to.
What?
Just wait till July is over, because I'm crazy right now.
I'm working on Smart Scale anyway.
That's true. Yeah, you don't want to wait till July. You want to wait till July's over too.
There's nothing. Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. So I can speak for Rob Maple and Jim Lynch, who aren't here. They sent me their comments. Rob sent me a bullet point list. So he engaged in something called the June prune. They have mowed, snipped, and trimmed 24 miles of natural surface trail in June. They installed new trail sign kiosks at all 3 natural surface trailheads: Quarry Canal Trailhead, the Quarry Sunshine Trailhead, and Mott's Trailhead. These signs cover the latest maps, trail etiquette, and trail status requirements, and much more. And he apologizes for missing the meeting again. Jim Lynch wants to let us know that the General Assembly passed a measure calling for a suitability study for the Dahlgren Railroad Heritage Trail to join Caledon State Park. They're in touch with DCR about how they will handle the study and offering their assistance. King George is conducting an update of the zoning ordinance. They're working with the county to see that the ordinance is more friendly for trails for them.
I mean, I'm just trying to understand this. We're spending money on a study to determine whether or not we're going to give this piece of land next to the park to the park. I'm like, just vote, yes or no. I mean,
There was no money attached to it. There was no money attached to it. It was a budget amendment that had no funding. It's just the budget then told DCR they had to do the study. So we are using state staff time, but there's no funding associated with it.
Unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're involved in the issue because it's been hanging. I'm glad that we have to decide whether we're going to vote and just think that park or not. So I'm like,
Do you have anything?
don't mind me, I have a weird idea.
I just now have to be back at work in like 11 hours.
Right, we got everybody?
Yeah.
Is that everyone?
I move to adjourn to September.
I second you.
All in favor?
Come along.